One thing that we like to hang over the heads of boxing fans is that our title fights mean something. Our title fights are the best versus the best. It's not a waste of everybody's time, and every fight, you have to watch every single UFC fight, because if you don't, you're going to lose the storyline. But realistically, this is not the true thing, because there has been a lot of title fights that have just been completely useless. So Tony has died. I'm going to go through the top 10 most useless title fights in UFC history. Now, these are title fights that kind of leave you scratching your head, like, why were these even booked? And title fights that just wasted everybody's time. Number 10 on this list, we got Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. This fight was a very interesting fight that got made. So Glover versus Yuri was an absolute insane fight, right? They went to war. It was crazy. Yuri ended up subbing Glover in the 5th round. He ends up tearing his shoulder in practice. His teammates try to put his shoulder back into his socket, so he has to vacate the belt. Well, he doesn't have to. He gives up the belt willingly because he realizes that the UFC needs to move on, and that when he comes back, he's going to get an instant title shot. So he said, I'm going to give up the belt, and when I come back, I'm going to get my title shot, right? The UFC makes Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Blachowicz for a title shot. It was a pretty lackluster fight. Like, it wasn't as bad as Dana White was saying, like, this was a disgrace to the sport. I think he was just pissed that it ended in a draw and ultimately was just a waste of everybody's time, because there was no champion. There was no light heavyweight champion 3 months, if I remember correctly, until they book another fight. Ultimately, this fight ended up just being a waste of everybody's time, because I think that Blachowicz low-key kind of should have won, because I think giving a 10-8 is a little like too much of a stretch for Ankalaev. I don't know if he necessarily did enough damage in the 5th round to warrant a 10-8, and I do think that Blachowicz could have got the first 3 rounds, but ultimately this fight ended up being a draw. One judge scored for Ankalaev, one judge scored for Blachowicz, and then one judge scored it a draw. So this fight just ended up being a waste of everybody's time.
Do not waste my time.
Number 9 on this list. This is the first fight that kind of just leaves you like, why would they even book this? Because Colby had not fought in 2 years up at this point, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was like a year and 6 months Colby hadn't fought, right? His only win was Jorge Masvidal. So Colby was just getting Dana White privilege in this fight. Dude, I'm gonna beat the fuck out of Leon, man. I just beat Jorge Masvidal. I got dropped by Masvidal, and I'm just gonna destroy Leon Edwards. Headshot dead, bro. Headshot dead. You know, in this fight, it really just didn't make any sense for it to get booked. Colby was on a 1-fight win streak. He just had a title shot. Like, he was like 1-2 in his last 4. He doesn't even have a win over someone that was in the rankings, I'm pretty sure, because Masvidal retired, Woodley retired, Robbie Lawler retired, RDA wasn't ranked, Damian Maia retired. So Colby didn't even have any ranked wins at that point, and they gave him a title shot. And the build up to the title shot was interesting, but we all knew Leon was going to win this. He was coming off of 2 wins over the pound for pound number 1 fighter on the planet. And so Colby, who just, he beat Masvidal very clearly, but he still got dropped by him, and we know Masvidal was washed at that point. So it wasn't even like a prime Masvidal that he beat. So this title fight was just useless. All right. Number 8 on this list, I got Alex Pereira versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Now, this fight ended up being one of the fights of the year. So it really wasn't a waste of everybody's time per se, but why this even got booked in the first place, it just kind of left me scratching my head. And we all knew that Pereira would end up winning this fight, but Khalil Rountree, he went above and beyond in these expectations, right? So Khalil Rountree was on a 5-fight win streak against the likes of legends like Chris Daukaus and Anthony Smith. And he ended up getting a title shot against the pound for pound number 2 at the time, Alex Pereira. And on his 5-fight winning streak, he actually had a robbery win against Dustin Jacoby, right? And we all know that Jacoby won that fight. It was a big robbery. And so everyone was like, why the hell is Khalil Rountree getting a title shot? All right, he's going to try to ask you to join his special friend group, all that kind of shit, right? So overall, we knew Pereira would win this fight. It was super entertaining. Rountree did better than everybody expected him to and gained a lot of fans and respect that day. But overall, this fight was a complete waste of everybody's time because Khalil Rountree didn't deserve the title shot. There was a clear number one contender in Magomed Ankalaev, who was just beat Rakic and beat Johnny Walker, and arguably should have beat Blachowicz, even though I thought Blachowicz should have got it. This fight was useless. Number 7 on this list, we got Michael Bisping versus Dan Henderson 2. This fight is as useless as you can get, bro. Dan Henderson was not even the top contender. Dan Henderson wasn't even in the top 10. And he was 46 years old and had lost 6 out of his last 9 fights leading up to this. And it made no sense competitively. Michael Bisping, he just needed an easy title defense. I think that's what the UFC wanted because Michael Bisping talked a lot of trash. There were people like Jacare, Yoel, and Luke Rockhold that were not given the title shot. And it was just complete waste of everybody's time. I mean, Dan Henderson. Oh, hey, buddy, this reminds me of my fight with Dan Henderson the first time where I got brutally knocked out. I guess Bisping just wanted to avenge one of his old losses. It was for no reason at all because Dan Henderson wasn't even in his prime at this point, bro. Like, if this was maybe like, if they did the rematch for this fight like 3 years earlier, maybe it would have made a little bit more sense. This ended up just creating a logjam in the division. It was a retirement fight for Dan Henderson, so I guess they're like, we'll just give him a pity title shot for his last fight. But it was not competitive at all. Bisping dog walked him like everybody expected. It was just a sad affair to take place, bro. So yeah. Number 6 on this list, we got Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev versus Renato Moicano. That's a real thing, guys, as Chelsonen says. But Islam Makhachev versus Moicano was a complete waste of everybody's time because originally this fight was supposed to be Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2. Arman Tsarukyan coming off of a win over Charles Oliveira. A very questionable win, mind you, but Arman Tsarukyan was the clear number 1 contender. He beat Gamrot when he was robbed, so he was really like on a 9-fight win streak at this point, if you count the Gamrot win. He's coming off a bunch of good wins. He was going to fight Islam, and he ended up tearing it. I think he missed weight. I think Dana White actually came out and said that Arman missed weight, but the official reason that was given was an injury. It's pretty dumb in my opinion, because like, why not just tell everybody he missed weight? It was clear that it was definitely Arman's fault, because the way the UFC was telling him that he needed to go get another win before he fought for the belt again. But yeah, we all wanted to see Arman versus Makhachev. He pulls his back or he misses weight doing some shit with Nina Drama, right? And Moicano is fighting Beneil Dariush on the same card. We recently just saw Moicano versus Dariush, so we now know that Moicano would have lost regardless. Islam just subbed Moicano out in 1 round, which was very impressive from Islam, but ultimately this just being a waste of everybody's time. Number 5 on this list. Yes, I know this is for an interim fight. I know this was an interim belt, but why this fight was even happening made 0 sense to me at all. Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett for an interim belt. So Volk moved up to fight Islam. And so while they're doing that, the UFC goes, I got a good idea. Let's do Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett. He's coming off a robbery win over Calvin Kattar, and Yair Rodriguez, he's coming off a loss against Max Holloway and a fluke decision, like fluke injury over Brian Ortega. So let's do Yair versus Josh Emmett for an interim belt. It really makes a lot of sense. Colon. This fight was a waste of everybody's time because why did we even need to have an interim championship for this fight? Why can't it just be a number 1 contender fight? Because we knew Volk was coming back down to fight Yair because he just lost to Islam, so he had to earn another shot to beat Islam. It really just bothers me that this fight was an interim belt, So yeah, number 5 on this list, Yair versus Emmett. Number 4 on the list, we're gonna bring Smitty, man. We're gonna bring Smitty to this fight. He's not invited to the after party, man. O'Malley versus Cheeto 2. Cheeto Vera got completely destroyed by Corey Sandhagen not even 2 fights ago. It was somehow a split decision. We have no idea how, but he got completely and utterly dominated by Corey Sandhagen, 50-45 by Corey. And then he ended up beating, I think it was Rob Font. So he has the win over Rob Font. He beat O'Malley, Granted, I don't know if that fight was necessarily a fluke because Cheeto did end up throwing the shot that hurt his leg, but it was a weird moment, and we saw in the second fight, in this fight, that O'Malley just styles on Cheeto when he's 100% healthy. So, I mean, I think they just knew that Merab was absolutely going to beat O'Malley, and they wanted to get one more O'Malley title defense in before he ultimately would lose to Merab. Yeah, man, it just doesn't make sense why this was booked at all. Number 3 on this list, I got Usman versus Masvidal 2. So Masvidal was coming off of a clear loss to Usman in their first fight at UFC 251. He literally got beat 5-0, boring fight, had no moments of success whatsoever in that fight. Masvidal got whooped, right? And he got the title shot off of a win over Nate Diaz. That in and of itself is like sketch as fuck. The fact that he got an instant rematch, basically the UFC knew that Masvidal was the flying knee guy and they wanted to give him another title shot, man. They wanted to give Masvidal another title shot because it's super necessary. You know what wasn't super necessary? This fight. Usman just slept Masvidal out cold. One of the best highlights of Usman's career, so I guess it wasn't completely useless, but he didn't even fight again. He was 0-1 whenever he got the second fight with Usman. So, number 2 on this list, Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira. Listen, man, this fight was as useless as you could possibly get. Jamal Hill was coming off of a win over Thiago Santos, a fight that he didn't even look impressive in. Glover Teixeira was coming off of a loss against Yuri Prochazka. All right, he got dominated, right, as Jamal Hill says. But the only reason this fight even got booked as a championship fight is because Dana rage quit, right? The fight we talked about earlier, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev, it took place, and Dana White was so fucking pissed that there was no undisputed light heavyweight champion that he just made this fight. He didn't even call Jamal Hill. He literally just announced the fight. Yeah, Dana didn't even tell me I was fighting for the belt. I found out on the press conference. Dana basically just told Jamal Hill he was fighting for a belt at the press conference because he was so pissed. Because there was no light heavyweight champ. But basically, Glover was 0-1. He didn't deserve an instant rematch for a title shot. He was going to get the fight against Yuri, but that ended up not happening because Yuri tore his shoulder, if you remember me talking about that earlier. But he was supposed to get the instant rematch against Yuri because the fight was so good, but then they just ended up making him versus Hill, and it just didn't make any sense, and now Jamal Hill's the worst champion of all time. He beat 42-year-old Glover. Old Glover was prime Glover. He wasn't a washed version of himself. You know, the best version of Glover was the old Glover. So Jamal Hill beat Glover, and that's really good, but he was coming off a loss to Yuri. He should not have really gotten a title shot in the first place, and neither should Hill. If you take this fight and you take the Jan versus Ankalaev fight and you just erase them from history, then the belt becomes linear again. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, Reyes beat Jones, and then Blachowicz beat Reyes, and then Glover beat Jan, and then Yuri beat Glover, and then Pereira beat Yuri, and then Ankalaev beat Pereira. So if you do some wiggle room, right? Light heavyweight is linear, but you have to erase this fight from existence, and you have to erase the Blachowicz fight. And to nobody's surprise, number 1 on this list, the worst and most useless fight of all time, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic, who was 43 years old, coming off of a brutal KO loss, who hasn't won in 4 years, versus Jon Jones, who has only won 1 fight in 3 years, for the undisputed heavyweight belt, while there was an undisputed interim champion. You know, he literally was the champ. Like, Tom Aspinall was the champion. He always was the champion. We all recognize that Jon Jones was a coward, and nobody likes him, and that this fight was useless, okay? What is there to say about this fight that hasn't been said a million times? It was originally supposed to happen at UFC 295 in New York. I was actually bought tickets to go watch it because I assumed it was going to be Jones's retirement fight, which it ended up being. I wanted to watch Jones's retirement fight because he was the goat of the sport, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go watch the fight. It got canceled. They replaced the fight with Aspinall versus Pavlovich. Aspinall wins. He's the interim champion. At this point, when Aspinall was the interim champion, they should have said, Jones versus Miocic is not happening. Or if it does happen, it can't be for a belt unless Jones fights Aspinall. But alas, the UFC waited for The UFC waited for Jon Jones to, heal from his injury completely, and they rebooked this fight, and Jon Jones won it. Stipe had a little bit of success, but it showed everybody that Tom Aspinall would have ultimately ended up winning the fight against Jones because Stipe had a lot of success. He won the second round. But at the end of the fucking day, man, this was useless. It was a waste of everybody's time. Like, this was the biggest waste of time out of any fight ever, because we had an interim champion who is probably the best heavyweight we have ever seen ever. We wanted him to fight the GOAT of the sport, and that would have been the best fight of all time, but the UFC was just so adamant in making this fight for Jon Jones, and Stipe was like, he shouldn't have even been ranked. They have him ranked at number 8 for some reason. He shouldn't have even been ranked because he hadn't fought in 4 years at that point. He was coming off a KO loss, so I get it. He's the GOAT of heavyweight versus the GOAT of light heavyweight, the GOAT of the sport, but we had an interim champion, someone who's better than both of them. Why was this fight even going to happen? So, yep, number 1 most useless fight of all time, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. If you liked the video, like, subscribe, do all that YouTube shit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and really, guys, I really appreciate every single one of you. We just hit, I think we're at 8,000 subscribers now. It really means so much to me that you guys subscribe to the channel and like my videos and do all that. So I really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.